So this is Tafo Talks, and this week we're doing another interview with a tournament organizer. There's been a lot of stuff lately going on in terms of talks with Smash Summit and Tipped Off 11, and so we figure that we'll bring in somebody from the Tipped Off 11 camp. So we have the organizer here. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Okay. Hi guys, my name's Michael. My tag is FullMetal. I've been running Smash tournaments since 2006, back when I first got started. I run the Tipped Off series. We've had 11 or we're about to have our 11th installment. I was also the head melee TO at Apex for the past 4 years, or the past 4 years it ran because there was a year it didn't run.
Right.
Um, I run all the Smash games at Final Round, and I also run Smash at TFC, which happens in North Carolina.
Okay. So how did Tipped Off 11 originally start? Because you guys are already, at the 11th iteration, you guys have had, great players like Mutaking, Hungrybox, and PPMD as regulars to that tournament. So I understand that, you just mentioned that you're the guy that started it, so what inspired it?
Well, like back in the day, I was just a young nublet, and I really didn't have any skill or any connections in the community. But I made a lot of great friends through my traveling to other tournaments, going out of state, and I was like, I want a reason, to see my friends again, to give something back to the community, for everything that it's showing me and giving me. It really it helped me at a really dark point in my life. Um, Having a purpose, a focus, and Smash provided that. So I started trying my hand at running tournaments. The first ones were a little rough, but I started to gain more experience, more skill at it. People, came out in greater numbers. It all seemed like they were having a great time. So, it just kind of built from there. People were asking me for more, so I just kept hosting more.
Right. Okay, so, we've had, 10 successful tipped offs, and now we're on 11. So things have started a little shaky.
I'd
It's
agree
been a
with
couple
that.
weeks. So why don't you describe to us like what has happened in your point of view? Because I think everybody has their own story for it, right?
Right. Um, well, earlier in the year, probably like right about before Evo, was when I started looking to lock down a venue and get a date out for Tipped Off 11. It's kind of like
So
TO.
July-ish, right?
Yeah, about July-ish. It's like TO code of conduct to try not to step on any other events if they can help it.
Yeah.
So I was having polls in local Smash groups. I was asking on Twitter for advice about dates, and I got some feedback on that.
Yeah.
Um, we were originally going to go to a venue called the Cobb Galleria, really nice place. They were offering about 6,500 square feet for $5,000, which is not too bad of a deal.
Yeah, that's
But
pretty good.
they came back with the electrical estimate because they've got the special boxes that don't actually have the three prong ports. They have to run the little boxes throughout the venue, and that came back as an additional like $4,500. And I was like, okay, well, there's absolutely no way that we can do this. I can't bank on enough people showing up to risk this much out of pocket. Um, so we went and talked to the venue that we went to last year, the Clarion, and they were offering a much better deal. It was much more affordable, about $3,000 for 5,000 square feet, and they were also very willing to work with us on getting discounts on rooms and stuff. So when we finally came to that conclusion, about another month had passed, right about the middle of August, and that's when Posted Up made the announcement. So we'd been making noise for a couple months, and then finally got our date up. I understand from what Blur said that he had, right before I posted Tipped Off up, he had given an approved list of dates to the BTS guys. Is that correct?
I'm not 100% sure. That's what it sounded like.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, like a thought or a question I have about that, Blur was calling for more open communication between, TOs and himself, and I agree that's something that needs to happen more in the future so we can avoid having cross conflict between tournaments, especially between grassroots and esports. I don't want to have a conflict evolve, from any events that transpire this year that causes, a fracture in the Smash community,
Right.
where we have people trying to support one or support the other, you know, like the old El Paso rule. Why don't we have both?
Um,
Um, so I was thinking, you know, yes, we should be reaching out to Blur more, but I'm also not sure why there wasn't any sort of, double check. Like if he had just handed the list to them, and I assume he was in some capacity aware of Tipped Off. I've known Blur for a little while. He's talked with me before. He and I talked a lot at Apex 2015.
right.
So I'm not quite sure why there wasn't a double check there, just to say like, oh hey, like this thing's happening here, and it's my job as an employee at Twitch to make sure this doesn't happen. That's a unresolved question I and a lot of people I've talked to have.
Yeah. I'm not quite sure either because I would imagine I'm not gonna try to like demonize Blur, but I would imagine that at some point in the communication, I imagine one of two scenarios happen. I have not talked to Blur recently, so this is kind of speculative. I feel that solution one was this, or the two possibilities in my mind are this, and once again, I have not confirmed with Blur. So, one is he just simply forgot and he messed up, or two, he may have given a list of dates, or I don't know. Maybe BTS gave a list of dates because they have Dota, right?
Hmm.
And maybe he said, maybe BTS said, "Well, here are the handful of dates that will work out," and maybe Blur gave that. Blur said, "Well, I don't know, this really big tournament, maybe Big House or something. You can't do that," and maybe you guys got the short end of the stick and said, like, out of these like important events and these dates, the one that causes the least conflict is Tipped Off 11. I don't know. Those are my two theories.
Right. And I mean,
It's
I'm definitely open to like more public discussion, so we can like we're all human, so like if it just slipped Blur's mind, then I can't really fault him for that, but
well, you still can, right? Because we don't fault Blur, we fault the process, right?
right. And that's one of the things I want to talk about is how we can improve that process
Yeah.
so that we don't have grassroots stepping on esports or esports stepping on grassroots. It
Right.
shouldn't be one or the other.
Yeah, I would agree because, you know, I think every weekend almost we have an event, and it's only gonna come naturally that this is probably gonna be more of an issue. Whereas 2 years ago we had what Evo, Apex, and then some small regionals once a month, give or take. So I think overall we need to make sure and communicate that the PSA is talk to Blur. We got to push Blur to double check because I frankly think it's inexcusable that an issue happens, and I think Blur already manned up to it and said, "Hey, like, yeah, it was my fault. Blame me for this." Because at the end of the day, right? You're a great guy. I think BTS, from what I've gathered, they're decent people. Blur's a good guy, and I don't think anyone's like on purpose like trying to sabotage each other, and it just comes down to just making sure that everybody's in line.
Oh, I mean, absolutely not. I don't feel that there was any sort of malicious intent on anyone's part here. The BTS guys I'm not too familiar with. Like this is their first foray into the Smash community, so I do have questions about exactly what they're doing with their donation drive, like where they're allotting those funds, and it if even if they're only in it to make money, there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
Everybody's allowed to try and make money, but I just feel like maybe we should take a closer look at the precedent that this sets for the interaction between grassroots tournaments and esports tournaments.
Right.
Because if obviously nobody's going to fault any of the top 16 players or BTS for running this event. The fact that Tipped Off gets stepped on here. Obviously, I personally feel it's unfortunate, but it has serious ramifications if we say, okay, esports, brings this community. They bring money, they bring hype, they bring corporate sponsorships, they bring all sorts of good things, and we all want those for the Smash community because we want to continue to grow and improve as a scene. But if you say, oh well, it's just unfortunate that it was an accident that this other tournament got stepped on. You set the precedent that any future tournaments that might be stepped on by esports can just get swept under the rug, and they kind of have to suck it up because it'd be incredibly selfish to you know make a big stink or to make a public outcry against the esports. There's got to be room enough for all of us, but I definitely want to make sure that somehow, at least out of this comes a refinement of the process so that there's not any, you know, just I guess future miscommunication or ways of grassroots getting stepped on and having, just suck it up because esports.
Yeah. And for the most part, I think as a community, we've been naturally very, skeptical of any organization that comes in. So I think it does reach, a high level of scrutiny, right?
Hmm.
We did this with even Evo back in the Spirit Bomb days, where we're like, oh, like is Evo a trusted company? Why are we donating money to this? There's actually a lot of criticism to that, and I think we can stay skeptical. And I actually did a money calculation, and between Smash GG and Smash Summit, like, um, so if they made the $30,000, right, level 6,
Hmm.
I looked at it, and 17.6K will go into funds. It seems like some chunk of money will go to Homemade Waffles, Phil, Toph, Scar, and Wife to come to do interviews and commentary and a show, which is like another probably like 3 to 4 thousand if you include hotel accommodations and everything and food.
Right.
There's some money that goes into the actual material of the products itself that they sell.
Yeah. The
I don't
control.
know. I'll probably say like 1,500 if they sold 30,000, which is about 5%. Some go to credit card fees. So let's say that's like 24K, and then that explains, well, where is this other 6K going? And I don't really think they're making much money because they still have to fly and accommodate to 16 players. They have to give a 12K pot to begin with,
Hmm.
and so they're going very negative on it regardless.
Well,
But
that also remains to be seen. The donation drive isn't closed yet.
yeah,
And I do feel like, their overhead on the BTS house itself is probably pretty low.
uh,
Um,
they're providing hotels for the players though.
yeah, yeah. I mean, that was something you mentioned when you were talking about, flying all those people out there, food, housing, all those accommodations.
Yeah,
And I've always seen, some feedback from the community, even on a very small level. They want to know where their money goes, you
right.
know. And personally, as a TO, I feel like the goal of a tournament is not to make money, quote unquote, but that's just me personally.
Yeah,
Um, but losing money is unacceptable, because like we're all adults, we all have lives, like I have a mortgage and bills and stuff,
yeah.
At this point, I can't afford to lose money on tipped off anymore. Otherwise, it could have serious ramifications on, my personal life and day to day.
Right. And you know, I totally agree. And also, I'm a fan, like, because you put hours into doing this. And granted, money is probably not the first thing that comes to mind, but if you do a good job, I totally think you deserve to be paid, and that's something that I also want to shift in the Smash culture. I think there was a time where I actually raised venue fee from $3 to $4, and this was just to cover costs of me printing things, like getting nice stuff for the tournament. And I actually got a lot of flack personally for it. They're like, "Oh, like Tafo is money hungry to raise the venue," and I was like, "Oh, most of the money already goes to the venue, and any extra was just to buy material." But I don't think a lot of people understand that as well. I'm not sure what your experiences are with it, but there is an
I agree
interesting
with you 100% there.
precedent, right? And I want to hear your take. So
Okay.
the Big House 5 did a compendium, and now there's another compendium thing. Now my worry is that it gets old and people get disillusioned. For example, Dota does the compendium, I think, once a year for their summer tournament. What's your take on it?
I mean, I feel like crowdfunding it's a very powerful thing, and while we've seen it used to great effect, like I was not fortunate enough to attend the big house. I've never been to one, but I would like to go to one at some point. Everything I've seen that Joe guy does, he's my favorite TO in the world. I aspire to be, more like him in what I do.
Yeah.
Um, and I think they did a great job utilizing the compendium to, meet the needs of the community, and that's what crowdfunding should be for, to meet the community's needs, not to, put more money in companies' pockets or even individual TOs' pockets. And I feel like maybe it's starting to get a little overused. I'm personally worried that not all of the Smashers have expendable income. Our player base ranges from kids who are 13 to 30. Like
Yeah.
we're a very widely spectrumed community, and just the constant use of compendiums and donation drives, it unsettles me a little bit. Although I can't be too critical of it, because we're putting one together for Tipped Off as well, to perhaps get a few more hype players out.
Yeah.
So I mean, just moderation in all things.
Yeah.
I don't think that there's enough people with deep pockets in the community to fund everybody's tournament. I feel like the merit of a tournament or an event is what brings the people to it, and when they're satisfied with that experience, that event, that builds brand loyalty, and people will come back, and they're willing and more trusting to put their money into your hands in exchange for the experience that they're expecting.
Right. So how are you holding up? You have, you're like in the last month of, prep, and usually that's like where it starts to like amp up and be stressful. So how's that going for you?
It's definitely been a little stressful, because I talked with Papa Paint back at Evo about the trailer, and it took me a while to get the money set aside so that I could pay him for his services. So we got that up late. Didn't quite get as much hype spread out as we wanted to for that. Um, there's simple stuff like badges, lanyards, electrical supplies, um, staff shirts, all the little odd knickknacks and things. So that those are kind of starting to mount up. We've got close to 200 people pre-registered, I believe. And
And
um,
what's your goal? Like, so that we can get the audience to maybe participate in this and say, hey, like, yeah, we need to get more people into Tipped Off.
um,
What's your goal?
last year we had, I think, about 280 different people in the door, and my goal is just to do better than that every year. To, try and increase the number of people who come to my event. Increase player satisfaction and the overall tournament experience. So I'm hoping to break 300 this year.
Nice. And how can you sell the audience that may be watching it to go to Tipped Off?
Well, I feel like each tournament that is successful and continues to run has maybe a theme or a value that they espouse, and you can see it clearly in some tournaments more than others. Like for Apex, their big thing was just the hype, huge numbers, the huge tournament experience. That was everything that they were about, and it caused them to lack in other ways. Um, like for the big house, Rob's, I would say, value is professionalism, organization. He's on time. He does everything like clockwork. For Tipped Off, I feel like if I had to personify it, then the value that we espouse is family. It's like a family reunion. Everybody comes, everybody has a good time. We have a Mushroom Kingdom 2 only charity event, um, the proceeds of which go to my step-nephew. I don't know if that's an actual relation, but that's the closest way I can describe it.
Hmm.
His mother passed away last year, and he's left with no parents. So last year I organized the charity drive, and any amount of $1 or more gets you in the tournament, and all the proceeds go towards a trust fund to help him pay for college. We've done other charity events in the past, like back when Ness Noob passed away. We did a small charity event for him at Tipped Off 6, I believe it was. Um, so we really just try and come together as a community, have a great time. We get in the nitty gritty, we get the tournament done, we have great matches, and everybody parties and hangs out afterwards.
Mm. Alrighty. Is there anything else that we missed on that you still want to hit?
Um, well, let's talk a little bit more about due diligence,
Okay.
about like when you should have, like, not you specifically, like you generic you, when one should have their event posted up to do their due diligence to not step on other people, or just to make people aware so that people can attend their events and plan. Some events are posted up a whole year in advance, and that's like the big things like Evo. You're going to Evo next year. You're
Yeah.
going to go to CEO next year. All these different events. And I'm not quite sure why BTS only gave a month's notice for putting their event up if the schedule was approved back in like August. Maybe you know something I don't about like the way that bigger companies have to interact with Nintendo with like licensing and things like that. Um,
Um,
just
well,
curious.
so my so I think there's a bunch of things, right? I can't confirm this fact that I'm gonna say, but rumor has it for MLG. Remember how like MLG announced a month before, and people were like, "Well, what? Why did they do that?"
Hmm.
And people were believe that yeah, it was Nintendo behind that, and so there's that. Um, I think BTS guy probably knows better, but he mentioned that if he makes the initial splash, he wants to go really nice, cause or have a trailer and make sure that everything's in line. Um, so there's that too, where like if you announce a big tournament right at the end of like Big House 5, and there's like nothing, no stream, no like trailer or no website, then like you kind of kill your momentum. So I think that was the rationale. Um,
Mm.
maybe Blur, maybe BTS approached Blur a lot earlier. That's a fact that I don't know. But in terms of making public announcements, I think that's why. I think that's why people need to be more diligent in talking to Blur quickly, because it isn't just BTS apparently that's done that, but there's been a lot of tournaments that approach Blur like a month ahead of time, and that's going to inevitably create conflict.
Yeah, I
Um,
mean, like you said, we're just speculating here.
yeah,
Um, I would throw out in my opinion, that you should be giving at least 3 to 4 months, like a quarter of the year, if you plan for your event to have any splash effect at all. If you're
yeah,
looking to make it big enough that it dominates your region, or if you're big enough, even the nation, for the time slot you have planned for it. I feel like we should try and set a precedent that you know 4 months is great. If let's say that BTS had announced their date like right when Blur gave them the schedule, you know you can bet that I would have changed my date. I would not have tried to compete with that. I would have been like, oh, sorry guys, we have to go make a different date.
well, I think this is where it kind of failed, right? Because, and I think if we go by, there's two scenarios here, right? Blur forgot, that's his bad, and
Mm.
BTS told him, or BTS told him ahead of time, and should have gone to you right away.
Yeah, that's one thing that's been on my mind. Wondering why.
Yeah,
If there was knowledge of this, even if it wasn't public knowledge. Blur and I are friends on Facebook. I've spoken with him before. I feel like we're on friendly relations. Why was there, you know, no word given? I mean, but like you said, we're speculating. If Blur
yeah,
just forgot, he just forgot. There's nothing
yeah.
about that.
So I mean, yeah, exactly. So I think there's some fundamental breakdown in communication here that ended up happening. If I were to like speak into it, and I think we go back to that's unacceptable. And yeah, I think 4 months is great, because usually that's about the right amount of time where you even book the contract for the venue. If I'm thinking correctly, right? For a regional size tournament that's like at least 200 people, you have to find your venue right about that time.
Yeah, because venue availability varies based on the time of year. For one thing, there's plenty of other non-smash events that go on at the more preferable venues in any given region. And if you want to have a high quality tournament, a good event that people enjoy and want to come back to, you can't cram everybody into like a tiny
Yeah.
sweaty warehouse.
And that's why like the Evos, the CEOs, probably Apex and Big House, they can announce their venues a year in advance, because as soon as they're done with that, they are booking their next year's, whether it's at the same venue or a slightly bigger one. And because they're so CEO runs at the same venue every time, if I understand that correctly, so that's why they're able to announce a year and ahead. And I just think it makes sense that once you got the contract and you settle a few things, that you just let Blur know.
Mm. Well, I mean, that's another thing that uh, it's an unfortunate side effect of BTS's announcement. Big tournaments like CEO, Evo, the Big House, they have enough clout, enough reputation behind their name that they have garnered interest of either the community or of some sort of outside sponsorship. They have enough of a reputation you know to churn the waters. They're like the ocean liner that sails through the Pacific or something, whereas regionals or more like new startup grassroots tournaments, they're like a little dinghy and they get pushed aside out of the water. But I imagine it's every grassroots TO's dream to have their event grow in quality and tournament experience and size to the point where they don't have to really worry anymore about am I gonna break the bank with this, like what am I
Yeah.
risking. And that's the unfortunate side effect I'm getting to is that you know I know BTS did not do this out of malicious intent, but they have in fact stepped on, tipped off in a pretty big way. Melee has been deflated pretty hard now that there's no chance of like the Six Gods or Lucky was deconfirmed because he got called to the summit. Um, and I'm flying out Showdown to stream Melee for me.
Yeah.
They're a great quality stream. Love those guys, and it feels kind of like I'm also be glad to have them there, but there's going to be so much less viewership that I feel like they're more disappointed because they were like, oh, we're going to go to this big regional,
Yeah.
be great for our stream, and now that's been entirely deflated as well.
Yeah. Go ahead. Well, I think it's unfortunate, but I mean, for this case, I think you guys easily probably got the biggest shaft out of anybody. But you know what? If there's anything that I find some encouragement in, and this may be a thing that comes big a year from now, is partnerships with companies, right?
Hmm.
Because if BTS is willing to throw, like, I don't know, I would say even if they get like 30K from the compendium, give or take, um, like there's still like 15K in the red if I'm doing the expenses correctly. So like companies are willing to spend like 5 digits on Smash.
Yeah.
Maybe it's we tap into like these groups, that we find the right groups and right partners, that like maybe it's like, oh hey, like we run the successful event I tipped off. Would you partner with us? And maybe more companies are willing to fork over money to support. Not like just like, oh, like, yeah, we'll give you a chair to sit on, but like actual like you know.
Yeah. That was actually one of the closing points I had on my little cheat sheet here was
All right, do you want? I stole it. I apologize.
no, 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 no. That that's fine. I feel like this merits discussion. We can have some back and forth about it. Um, you know, the BTS guy claimed that they want to get involved in the community. They're passionate about it. They want to help the community, and I believe that I'll take him at his word. There's no reason to doubt anyone until they've given you reason to do otherwise.
Yeah.
So, what I'd like to see from more esports companies that are trying to break into the Smash community, or have been dabbling in it some. They're looking to expand, looking to run bigger, more expansive events. Is seek out the community leaders, seek out the TOs and the players who have been doing it for a long time. And work with them. There's no reason we can't work together. Why can't we have both?
Yeah.
And I hope that they wouldn't be too set off by the sharing of power or the sharing of money to make these high quality events happen. I know that's been a problem in some other situations. Just to throw in a small personal real quick, my experiences as head TO at Apex for Melee, I was given responsibility but not necessarily the authority to do exactly what I needed to do. And I feel like that's a problem with any collaboration, but I feel like it's worth the time and effort to try and make that kind of thing happen
Right.
between esports companies and grassroots tournaments.
Yeah, I agree. And that's like one thing that if I'm gonna toot Robin's horn, is that he gives people authority, and it just works phenomenally.
Oh yeah, like we can sit here and talk about how great Joe Guy is for
Yeah.
for at least half an hour, dude. I love that guy.
Yeah, he's amazing. But so it's gonna be interesting, right? Like we look ahead, and I think to a certain extent we're lucky that this hasn't happened as much as it has, even though like every instance of this happening is really crappy. I'm not gonna spoil, but I think this is where we're gonna have to really see and observe what happens in the next year.
Yeah, I
Um,
feel like my tournament was and is just big enough, has enough story to it, enough history that this kind of conflict really sparked a reaction in some of the community. Um,
right.
and I feel like if anything, positive comes out of this, that it should be improved relations between esports companies and the community itself. The community spent all these years building ourselves up, doing the donation drive to get into Evo, working out how tournaments work and exactly how we want our community to be. And I feel like it'll just be so much better if we take the lesson from this and say, hey, let's not just make it okay for esports companies to come in and step on other events. Let's communicate. Let's work it
Yeah.
out. Let's talk. I'm in fact thinking about getting a projection set up to run a stream of BTS's event at Tipped Off. As like a sign of goodwill that hey, you guys' event, I'm sure it's going to be hype. It's going to be great. I know even people who are at my tournament are going to see it. So I'm going to try to find a way in my floor plan to have another projector so that they can watch the event as they're playing their matches Tipped Off, doing all that.
Yeah. And I think, um, let's see, you've probably gotten full circle on some of the key points that you want to present. Is there anything else that we're forgetting? I'm worried that there might be one.
There might be. Let me check my cheat sheet. Mm, we can talk about oversaturation if you want.
Um, Oversaturation. I feel like I've talked about a few times on my Tafo talks, but if you want to bring in like a unique perspective, your take on it. My take was that um, there's like fatigue for top players. Like there, it seems like we have every like there's no build up and less hype when you have too much of it. So like I think back in the 2012 2013 era, Apex was the winner thing that like everybody knew to watch. Like out of
Mm,
everything you had to watch, it was Apex, and if it was the summer, it was Evo. But I feel like we're in this weird conundrum where everything seems about equal, and we have these like big tournaments that's like okay, like what's the tournament we have to watch, or what's a player obligated to like, and that question remains vague. But I want to hear your take actually.
okay. It's actually been a kind of an emerging problem just in the Georgia Smash scene. There's a tournament every weekend. There's probably two tournaments every weekend. There's a bunch of people getting excited about the community, trying to get involved, trying to run events, and it's just like players getting burnt out. Um, Nika Boy, one of my close personal friends, has
Sheik
gone to a
main.
tournament. Yeah, the Cheat guy. He's a cool dude. He's actually in the other room there. He's gone to a tournament for the past 3 weekends. He's going to STR, and as am I, this next weekend. Then there's, I believe, another tournament somewhere he's going to, maybe in like Byron, Georgia, the weekend after that. And then there's Tipped Off. Players, even not at the upper echelons of competitiveness, they can still get burnt out too. There's so many tournaments, and I'd like to maybe try and throw down some groundwork for like a committee or like something to help schedule this so that one, we don't step on even the smallest of grassroots events, new startups, people who want to be excited about it
Yeah.
and help out. I don't, that's a massive undertaking, but I'll definitely do a lot of thinking about it and try and draft some sort of ideas, like maybe a group of top level people in the community, figureheads that could set forth some sort of, guidelines for like, hey, this is how you should conduct your events, and you should, post all of your stuff here on this site so that we can make sure that, everybody's aware of what's going on and that there's no, at least as little conflict as possible, because you can never have no conflict. Somebody's going to want to hold a tournament on the same day as yours, no matter what.
Yeah. And then yeah, I think that's like really important, and it only gets difficult, right? Because not only do you have to look at the regional national level, you have to look at local competition between the same region. Like SoCal actually has like 5 tournaments a week.
Holy crap!
Yeah, we have one on Wednesdays, usually one on like the weekend, one on like Tuesdays, one on Fridays. It's actually insane.
Wow.
Um, so it's an interesting dilemma. Like, I don't even know what to like think of as a solution because in SoCal, like just to go back, like we have SSS and Mayhems. We have to make sure that doesn't conflict with some of the local tournaments and it doesn't interfere with like a J&J's. Then we have like the regional level stuff where there might be a NorCal or Arizona tournament, and we can't conflict with regional and national level tournaments.
Hmm.
And so that's like one of the big dilemmas. I don't really have a full solution because at the end of the day, like it's going to require some sort of compromise, and I don't know what the full decision making in determining which group gets favored and which one doesn't. Because if we always favor the bigger tournaments, then the small guys don't grow, and that's not fair. And sometimes it doesn't make sense to always support the small guy when everybody's going to go to the big tournament. So,
Yeah.
um, I think for Georgia, you guys are probably going to have your own set of issues. I'm pretty sure like people like Nika Boy, Soft, and all of them are probably going to burn out multiple times in the year, and they're just going to have to come to terms and accept, well, I can't enter every event. I'm going to take weekends off, and that's totally okay.
Yeah. I
And
mean,
it, go ahead.
oh, go ahead.
I
No,
was
you first. It's your show, man.
no, go ahead. I was going to kind of like wrap up, but if you have anything to
Okay.
add.
All right. I'll just hit on one last point then, and then we can wrap it up. It's really hard to tell what's right or wrong in terms of these tournament conflicts. Because everything's shades of gray. Everything's based on opinion and personal experience. And it's really hard to set down a list of rules for the way that TOs should conduct themselves and that they should behave towards other people who host events of the same type of nature. So my final message would be just to urge anybody out there who's running events, whether it's esports or grassroots, be as vocal as possible and make sure that you learn about the community that you're trying to be involved in. Make sure that you talk to key people. Melee at Almy is a great resource. They have great, knowledgeable people in the community. Reach out to them, talk to them, and tell them, what you're trying to do, how you want to be involved, and let's just all play nice in the sandbox.
Alrighty. Yeah, I agree, and I think just communication, right, is the point of emphasis. Now, so in the next month, tipped off. What's the social media and website avenues that people can look at to continue to find information?
There's the posting on smash.gg. I can pull the URL for that right now if you need.
We can put that in the stream.
Okay. There's also the trailer that's available on YouTube, made by Papa Paint. Great trailer. He's really good at what he does. There's also the Facebook event, which I can find for you.
And then also message me, then I can put it in the YouTube video.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm doing. I'm sending it to you right now.
Okay, cool.
So, I guess other than that, I want to say thank you for having me on to discuss. I'd be happy to have a talk on Melee at Almy with the BTS guy, or be available for any sort of consultation, or to provide input or feedback. So just let me know.
All right, perfect. Thanks for coming on. Thanks for having your Sunday where you could be watching apparently Wizrobe and Mewtwo King play.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, thanks for coming on, and if you feel like there's something important that needs to be shared, yeah, just feel free to ping me or Nick. In the
Absolutely.
future. All right. Have a good night, everybody, and thank you very much for coming on.
Thanks so much, Tafo. Talk to you later.